Oui, vous m'entendez?
I will speak in French.
C'est comme vous désirez, bien sûr. Vous avez bien sûr le choix de parler en français. Oui, je vous entends.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
I hear
Sì,
you.
buongiorno Brando, vi sento, sì.
Oh, sì, perfetto, perfetto. Bene. Io sono abbastanza all'inizio, no? Mi pare. I'm like the third speaker or something like that. No?
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's okay. You can hear me? Yeah? Wonderful.
No, I'm asking
Dear
because
colleagues
obviously being on a
of
train,
the S&D group,
I will
and
leave
the
after I
PS in
speak.
the Committee of the Regions,
Anyway,
Buongiorno
thank you
Brando,
for
mi scusi,
inviting me to this
penso a
opening.
una soluzione
The
migliore.
S&D
Semmai
group
la sua
has been
connessione non è
pushing
buona.
for an integrated approach to step up the efforts in the EU to
non
eradicate
posso farci
child
niente.
poverty in
Non
form
sente?
of a child
Brando,
guarantee.
Brando,
This
Does it
guarantee
work or
can
not?
have
funziona,
a
ma vi
similar
prego,
impact
I don't know
as
that.
the
Yes.
Young
Brando, vi
Guarantee
prego di
of
chiudere la
youth
camera per una
unemployment in the
migliore
EU
connessione della sua
since 2014.
audio.
And we need to be
Okay,
proud
but how can
of it.
I
The
speak
child
without being
guarantee
on the video?
is the baby of our
It's
political family.
Abbiamo
It
un
was
screenplay
one of our
e
conditions to support
sapremo
Ursula
quando è
von
il
der
suo
Leyen
turno di
and the
parlare.
new European Commission.
Grazie,
Nuestra familia
grazie.
política ha de continuar luchando para erradicar la pobreza. ¿Qué futuro nos queda si los niños y niñas de hoy no tienen acceso a una educación, a una sanidad y a una vivienda decente? ¿En qué lugar se puede tolerar la malnutrición?
Don't have access to health and to decent housing. Child guarantees are now going to become a reality, and they should be part of the struggle against poverty, the fight against poverty, and for the future of these children, which is also part of our future. For when we find ourselves in a situation when one out of 5 children is in poverty, it means we urgently need measures, employment measures, housing measures. Our group at the European Parliament, with the European Social Fund Plus, is essential. I'm convinced that this workshop will enable us to defend a union for the welfare of its citizens, starting with the youth. Thank you very much.
And we keep fighting for our children. Thank you so much. So we start with the first session of this workshop. Physically present here with me is Nicola Schmidt, is the European Commissioner for Jobs and Social Rights, and Susan Rödrich is SPD member of the Bundestag. She is in charge of child policies. It's very important. And connected online, we have Brando Benifei. I can see him probably. He's a European a member of the European Parliament from the SD group. It is the rapporteur on the child guarantee, amongst other things, of course. So the pandemic COVID-19 had devastating effects on the life of European children. We all know that. Children and their family in large numbers are falling into poverty, and many of them are facing dramatic learning loss. This is why, on the occasion of the International Children Day on the 20th of November last year in 2020, Progressive gathered more than 400 leaders, policymakers, experts, academics, and members of the civil society to call for a child union. That's the title of our workshop. A child union is the union of children, is a community that cares. And for Progressive, a community that cares means, first of all, ensuring free and public, universal, means for everybody, childcare services. According to a study conducted by the FEPS, children from lower socioeconomic households, if they participated when they are between 0 and 3 years old in an early childhood education program, are 50% more likely to reach the same level of educational competencies as their more fortunate peers when they're teenagers, so they're very long-term effects. The second is ensuring this service of high quality. But for a progressive, high quality means inclusion. So a service that meets everyone's child needs and also help the child to empower himself or herself. So to be an agent of change. And third, of course, service that interact positively with other welfare and labor actions, tackling structural inequalities that, invest families, impact on families, and of course on children. So enforcing these three principles is probably the most effective way we have a progressive to tackle the negative effects on the pandemic on children, and more importantly, to break the intergenerational cycle of inequalities, which is the probably most ignominious form of inequalities, because it puts children in disadvantage not based on merit but on inheritance. So I would like to start with Nicola, our commissioner. A very simple question. As a progressive, why for you is important to address child poverty inequalities?
Yes, thank you very much. I think that, as you have said already, and as Irache has also underlined, this is something which has been very close to the heart of our political family, for the reasons you have just indicated. We are the movement, we are the parties of equality. We are the parties of equal opportunities. And poor children, they are suffering from the absence of equal opportunities. And if they succeed in life, they have to do many more efforts to make progress. And therefore, I think it was a very important decision to propose this child guarantee. It took some time. Unfortunately, in politics, you have sometimes to be patient. But once this was in our program, we have worked like hell on this. We have made the proposal. It was adopted within 2 months by the Council, and on the 14th of June, and now it has to be implemented. And I think this is, for me, one of the most important actions of this Commission. And I want it to be the most important also in terms of impact. Because, as you said, poor children are also very often poor adults. And we are living in a society where knowledge is extremely important. And therefore, we have to take all the possibilities, to give all the possibilities to all children to be successful in their life. Poor children, the child guarantee, it has been mentioned what it means in terms of care, childcare. It means in terms of education. It means in terms of equal access to cultural, to sportive services and possibilities. It is better housing conditions. It means better nutrition. This is a bit strange when we are talking about that in rich Europe, but this is a fact, and we are talking about 18 million kids in Europe. 18 million kids. That's a country like the Netherlands. Can you imagine? And the Netherlands being all of this is an important number. And therefore, I think this is now the moment of implementation. We have to do that. The Commission is really pushing hard. We have already started to do that. And I agree, and this is, I would like to conclude with that. We can only be successful, first, in using the European money in a very targeted and efficient way. We have to mobilize all the forces in the member states, all the institutions. Therefore, it is very important to have a coordinated approach, because poverty has many aspects, many faces. So we have to bring this all together. But there is one other aspect. Alone with the child guarantee, it will be very difficult to take 5 million children. And I always say at least 5 million. I would like to take the 18 million children, poor children, out of poverty. And to be successful, we have to build up other social policies. First, decent wages for the parents. Because why are the children poor? They are poor because parents are poor, because they do not have good jobs, they do not have decent wages, they do not have decent housing. So we have to work also on these aspects very much, together with the child guarantee. And therefore, I think this is the comprehensive approach we have to now to implement. And this is a moral obligation, but it is also an investment in Europe's future, in our future, in the future of the cohesion of our societies. We are in a period where we feel that a lot in our societies divides, falls apart. We have now to work to bring everybody, to bring things together, and as it is always said, to leave no one behind. And we have to start with children.
Thank you, because actually children are the next generation EU, right?
Next generation EU.
Exactly. So, Susan, I have the same question for you. You are in charge of this policy here in Germany. And by the way, thank you for hosting us today here in Berlin. Why for you is important as progressive to work on child poverty, inequality, in particular access to childcare?
Ja, vielen Dank auch für die Einladung, dass ich hier bei Ihnen sein kann.
Thank you very much for the invitation. This ends my meeting week very nicely, because the topic I've been dealing with most is child policy, and a large chunk of that is child poverty. And child poverty has consequences. In Germany, we have an alliance of forces in the civil society, and our motto is child poverty has consequences. You mentioned some of them already, and I would like to give you a specific example. Children from poorer families are very often less good, have a less good nutrition. They move less well, in their health too. They are disadvantaged, and this is something that you carry on your own life. And children cannot influence that themselves. Children from poorer families live in districts where they cannot move so well because there are big streets and things like that. So there are many other aspects that limit children, that restrict them, poorer children. And I was angry, upset about this since I was young. That's why I joined the Youth Association. And in addition to school education, we also make sure that children after school are still people and can participate, can get involved, and can get suggestions, can move, or that this is connected to the school. And that would be my favorite model, to have a comprehensive approach, to achieve a comprehensive approach, and not only fight child poverty, but do away with it completely, as you just said. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. And we know that we will be elections soon here in Germany, so good luck with that. We will talk about it later. Brando, you are in the European Parliament, so you have the point of view of the other institutions. Tell me, why is it important for you as progressive? It's the same question, then we go in detail with other aspects. Why is it important for you as progressive to fight the child crisis, the child poverty and inequality?
Yes, this is for sure a very important question to ask, because why do we do things? What moved us? Well, I think it's the huge injustice of millions of children in Europe that still are living in a condition that is too unequal. Child inequalities are both the symptom and the cause of a broader social set of social inequalities. Eradicating child poverty and social exclusion must be, for any person or politician that holds the social justice and social progress at his heart, one of the key objectives to pursue. Children who live in a disadvantaged background with disadvantaged access to essential basic services are victims in the very first and crucial phases of their life of a comparative disadvantage vis-à-vis their peers. This brings about serious consequences for their material development, for their human development and the learning process. So I think it's really depriving these children of decent living conditions, education opportunities. And this creates costs and problems in the long run for the whole of society, not just for them. So I think that fighting, as we have done, and it was explained very well by Nicolas, for the fight that we have put together as a family in these years to reach this objective. And I want to thank also Irace that intervened at the beginning, mentioning our efforts to reach this very symbolic but significant result. Because, and I conclude on this, why it is so important. It's important because we want to say that from the early age, people need to have social justice in their life. They cannot have a bad start at life without any reason for it to happen, or just brutal inequality that is too strong in our society. So for us, it's also a clear direction. And I also like to support this idea of a child union as a larger effort to sustain children, because, as I said, it's a way of orienting policies and also the use of resources. Also looking at the next generation youth, I think that children and young people must be at the core of the recovery plans, and we are paving the way with
connection stopped.
This effort on the child guarantee. So that's why it was so important for me as a progressive.
Stop, but I think that Brando made perfectly the point. So what is important then is that we, by tackling inequality in the early age, we basically tackle inequalities at present, today, because we all know that, of course, when you have the possibility of accessing services for children, that also has an effect on inequality in families, increasing equality, especially for women, to have access to the labor market, and of course inequality in the future, because we equip children to become then later agent of change or active citizens. So that's a very powerful idea. Nicola, I want to come back to you because you talk about the situation of children, but I would like you to go a bit deeper on that, because you mentioned the 18 million. I think if we gathered together all these children in one country, would be probably the fifth, no? most populated member state, which is a devastating figure. So can you also give us some figures about that more in detail? So I think that other countries are, I mean, not only, this is not only something for, you know, the usual suspects, no, the poorer countries, and also access to childcare. From children from 0 to 3 and preschool education. That's something also to know. What the situation of children, how far we are from this idea of the child union, the union of children.
Well, first, I agree that child poverty is unfortunately not a monopoly of the poorer member states in the European Union. Child poverty is everywhere. I'm coming from apparently the richest country of the European Union, but the level of child poverty is quite high, because poverty always has to be measured in relation to an average, to a situation in one particular country. So we have a high percentage of over 20% in half of the member states of the Union. That's what has been decided also, that member states who are above the average has to allocate more money from their European Social Fund money to combat child poverty. So this is one aspect. Child poverty is everywhere, and we have really to focus wherever the level of child poverty is high. The second point, which is, in my view, very important, and you mentioned this already. We have a lot of child poverty with single parents families. And especially when we are talking about single parents, This means single mothers having children. And they have no good jobs, they have not good housing, they can very often, if childcare is not enough, not very developed or expensive, they cannot work, or at least not full-time work. They have to work part-time if they can, and this makes that they have a low wage. So that's why I say we have to approach this problem in a more global way. And if we say we need free access to childcare for children of low-income families, this is essential for the children, but it is essential for the whole family, and especially for the parents, or especially very often for the single mother. And that's all over Europe. The most sensitive families in terms of poverty and of child poverty are single parent and single mother households. And this is, I think, something we have to address by free childcare. And I think a lot of countries have now understood that. Childcare, by the way, is important also to reduce the gaps in terms of education, in terms of language. We all know that the most decisive years in a child's life are probably the 3-4 first years. And when you do not get the care, when you do not live in a certain environment, well, you are already losing part of the possibilities you need afterwards to strive at the level of education, of school, and so on. And this is, I think, very important, and therefore we want every member state to put into place the right responses to this very important issue.
Thank you. Actually, I mean, what you describe is a sort of negative cycle that we are still, we basically increase and not decrease inequalities, because you have single parents family or family with one parent or in poverty. They do not access childcare, so of course they cannot get work and increase their income, and of course the children will be poorer in terms of competencies and so on and so forth. So we repeat the cycle, so we need to break this cycle. There's something interesting that you said about Luxembourg, your country, that in Luxembourg it's a high number of children at risk of poverty or social exclusion. So it's not just something for the usual suspects. And I would like to ask the same question to you, because you also come from a country that is certainly not poor, that is Germany. What's the situation of child poverty in Germany? And as Commissioner outlined, what are the categories that are hit most from the child poverty, and what's the situation also in terms of accessing childcare?
Ja, also leider ist das genauso. Wir wohnen in einer sehr wohlhabenden Region.
Well, unfortunately, it's exactly the situation that was described. We live in a region of the world that's extremely well off, and still we have between 17 to 20% of children that either live in poverty or are threatened by poverty. And we already heard about the consequences of child poverty. There is another fact, and that is that child poverty is often concentrated in certain regions. In the eastern part of Germany, for example, we have a different income level and different savings than we have in the western part of Germany. It's concentrated on certain districts of town or certain neighborhoods. The Commissioner spoke about single parents, and we have another phenomenon, which is that we've got families that have just joined our country, that have just come to our country, and sometimes they have poor income jobs because the parents speak poor German, and then the children are not sent to childcare, to kindergarten, because people think that their parents are at home anyway because they haven't got a job. That increases the probability of poverty, and this is why we have a legal claim for parents to have childcare facilities for children below the age of 3. The German Federal Parliament also decided to introduce a legal claim for childcare for for primary school children too, that is to say childcare for the afternoon when there is no school. But we are currently talking about the implementation of this legal claim, which we already have. That is to say that each and every family can really exert or can really use this right to childcare. We're only talking about quantitative figures here. We're not yet talking about the quality of childcare. And the question is whether you can afford childcare if one wage is spent on paying for childcare plus lunch, and some parents might feel that it doesn't pay off to go to work if your wage is eaten up by childcare fees. Social Democrats are of the opinion that education and vocational training should be for free up to the level of a master craftsman. And a childcare facility is, of course, an institution of education. It's part of our educational system. As you said, we are heading towards elections for the German parliament, and as part of our party manifesto, we have a comprehensive program that includes free education for preschool children, including a free lunch. This is something we must not forget. That is to say, we want to make sure that the entire infrastructure surrounding the child is free of charge. I'm talking about extra lessons in the afternoon, tuition, sports activities and leisure activities. And if I live in the countryside and there is no public transport, which my children can use to go to their sports club, it's pointless, which means that we also need to have a good public transport infrastructure, because otherwise poorer children will not be able to go and use those offers.
Is precisely the point, and I think that what you're proposing in your manifesto is excellent and might inspire other countries to do what Nicola just said, so to take the issue of child poverty and inequality in an holistic manner, and especially, in my view, the idea of providing childcare as a right, as an entitlement, is extremely important, because then the parents can claim if countries and members don't do it, don't implement, as you rightly pointed out. You talk about the child guarantee. I would like to ask Brando, because at the beginning was an initiative of the Parliament, so we paid a tribute to the Parliament, and of course at the end we have Progressive Team Europe, let's call it as such. They play very well, of course, with the Council to get done in a couple of months. So Brando, can you please explain a bit more in detail, of course a bit the child guarantee, I was born from the Parliament, and then why is important to some extent stimulate countries to provide free access to childcare for children and tackle child poverty properly, in the way that Susan just described is in the proposal of the SPD.
Well, I think it's crucial to actually tackle this situation also, as Nicolai said clearly, or also in the places where the level of poverty of children is lower. Because there cannot be an acceptable level of child poverty. And that's why we have been very hard on the negotiations. I was talking about that with Nicolai in the last days, that in the end, the European Social Fund Plus was the last structural fund to be closed as a file. Why? Because on 2 points, the Parliament was very, very harsh. One is the child guarantee, in fact. The other one was the FEAD, the Fund for the Most Deprived. We have kept strong the idea that we cannot just give money to the government. We cannot just give them money to do what they want. We wanted this money to be earmarked to fight child poverty. This was our commitment. We have taken that commitment, and we wanted to go that way. And it's crucial because data show us that think of the high number of NEETs, of young people that are inactive. They come from a problematic course of education and of starting of life. And so it's rooted also, the situation of the inactive young people, it's rooted in the child poverty. So that's why it's so crucial that we fought for this. And we, as you were saying, we had the negotiations with the council. We had to fight. But I think it was important to do this fight and to obtain also that all the member states, with different percentage, the worst will have to dedicate 5% of the social fund, the best ones, best, if we can say best, in terms of having only a little child poverty, they will need to anyway dedicate adequate funds. So everyone will have to deal with it. And I think this was important principle to defend from the parliament side. Obviously now implementation is crucial because we have to have the plans in place. Some governments might try to delay the putting in place of the plans, but we have given them these 9 months to put the child guarantee in place. And I think it's important to, as I said earlier, to use this as a springboard also for a larger child union, as you have been proposing with the project that we are discussing today.
Thank you, Brando. Actually, I myself, I've worked for many years in children policy and issue, and in my view, the most interesting aspect of the child guarantee, more than the financial aspects, is the fact that for the first time, countries engaged in plan policies that target specifically most disadvantaged children. So they must do policies that do that, so they really go at the heart of inequality. So you both said implementation is key, but this implementation is difficult. So how can we ensure that member states do actually implement properly the child guarantee? And properly means doing plans that really, really have an effect on the poorest and most vulnerable children.
Well, the first thing which seems to me very important is that member states, governments, but also local authorities or regional authorities understand that investing in their children, investing in children, reducing child poverty is good for everybody. It's good for the country, it's good for society. You just cannot say, well, it's like that, we have to accept a certain level of poverty among children. This is just how the things go. This is a loss. This is a loss of talents. This is a loss of all kinds of possibilities which children represent. So this is something member states have to understand. It's a more, I would say the first step has to be pedagogical, to say, well, please, that's our common interest. It's not a Commission imposing, we have to build up this together. The second one is certainly now they have to work on a plan, and Brando has said 9 months, we had proposed 6, they have asked for 9, fine. 9 months to work out a really comprehensive, coherent plan with the different aspects which have to be integrated into the plan. With the money, eventually they can draw from European money, but also national money and regional funding. But also, we have said, if there are investments needed, maybe they can use regional fund money. Our friend Elisa is very committed also to use some of the FEDER money to create the necessary infrastructure, because this cannot be done through the social fund. We also have another instrument which is called InvestEU to have also investments in this direction. Now, the second phase will be, well, there has to be a follow-up, because plans have to be transmitted, have to be shown, have to be discussed, and therefore it's very important every member state should have a coordinator where finally things come together, and so we discuss about the plans. Why are you doing this or that? Why they may also refer and have the support from organizations. We have, we have launched this with a lot of support from UNICEF. In some countries, UNICEF has played a very valuable role to help countries to set up certain policies. So this will be the follow-up. And we will really do this follow-up in a very, very active way. And we have this instrument called the European Semester, and child poverty has already been in the past an issue in the European Semester. It will be a very important issue in the future. And this is the way how we try to convince, but also to push member states to implement this child guarantee and to work for the improvement of living conditions of children.
Thank you. Thank you. That's extremely relevant, the issue of implementations. Germany as well, we will need to do a plan. And I have to say that the program that you are proposing fits in perfectly with the idea of the child guarantee, because the only way to ensure that the most vulnerable children have access to services is precisely to make them public and free, right? And imagine, and actually we hope that you will win the elections. So you will put in place this program and the plan as such. What obstacles you think you can face, but also what support you can get from citizens, for civil society. Commissioner, just talk about the support of civil society to that.
Ja, vielen Dank. Also ich denke erstmal sagen,
very much. I think all European countries will have started in certain respects, so we can really learn from one another quite a lot. And particularly what we have tried with our legal rights is a first building block. It also needs to be cost-free in the framework of our basic child guarantee. There's a big alliance, as I said, in our civil society that has been claiming this for a long time. I can say very proudly, we, the Saxonian SPT, were a very, very small party. Now it's the concept of the federal SPD. It costs a lot of money. But child poverty does also cost money, except it's the children that pay it with their future opportunities. So I think it's a good approach, and many of the services that would be part of the child guarantee already exist, but need to be asked for individually, are stigmatizing, etc. And we want to make this simpler. It cannot be done overnight in one go because we need a system change, but gradually we will get there. And something like our Corona child package, it's 2 billion euros that we use to make sure that we close the gaps in schools and outside schools over the next 2 years. That's already a good step in our view towards implementing, have a better implementation. And I'd like to say something about the 9 months. We very often say that the children are our future. It sounds that we had all the time, but it's not about the future, it's about the children now. And strictly speaking, it's not about us, it's about the children and about their life. They're already there now, so we don't have time to wait until one day we agreed on something, but now the successes need to happen now. You also asked whether there is any resistance, backlash. We try to include children's rights in the fundamental law for protection, participation and promotion, and the Union party said, also the right-wing party said, protection is okay, but not implication, not involvement. So we would have a completely different discussion if the children's rights were also enshrined in our constitution in Germany, as it is at international level, and that we had fundamental rights for children, because now they're only derived from the parents, but they don't have their own right for promotion and for participation. We would like to have that. We work with many initiatives in the civil society. One day, that big task will be achieved too.
Thank you. I ask you about obstacles because we always said that, children issues are consensual. It is not necessarily the case, And it's interesting what you said about the fact that it costs a lot. The Biden administration is putting $600 billion on ensuring preschool education free for all. I mean, it's starting from a different situation than us because they don't have access to preschool education. We are good, at least for children from 3 to 6 years old. But it's one of the 3 pillars of the recovery for the Biden administration. They call the Family and Jobs Plan. One of the 3 pillars is ensuring preschool education free for all, 600 billion. So it costs a lot. Last question for Brando. I will ask you to be brief if you can, because we are running out of time, unfortunately. A more political question. As I said, I worked on this topic for years, and it's not really the case that fighting inequalities and children inequality especially is consensual. So did you see, in any case, a paradigm shift with COVID-19 as a crisis towards more attention, cares? We have this beautiful word, cares for the most vulnerable, in particular children. From your point of view and perspective of the parliament, when you have your whole family united there.
Yeah, it's a good point, because clearly the European Parliament also has the right wing. Sometimes the Parliament is depicted as the most progressive institution, and to some extent it can be on some topics, but on social issues we always had clashes. We have differences. Only us, to be honest, us and a few others have been on the forefront of this battle with conviction also before the pandemic. Then it's clear that today the political conditions are better to advance in this work on the child guarantee and union, and also on the other social fights. On the Porto agenda is ambitious, and it's also possible because of the change in the way of thinking that we are seeing after the pandemic. It's more difficult now to sustain that we must be competitive cutting healthcare or making it less accessible for poorer people and for children. So I think that we have the political conditions to really create this social union that is not only necessary, but as I said, finally it is possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Before leaving, I would like to ask you a couple of questions, couple of seconds each. Make a commitment for European children, the next fight. Couple of seconds. Nicola, please.
Well,
your commitment.
My commitment is when my mandate ends, I want to see a lot of children saying, well, I got new opportunity because this was put into place. And Europe is really a social Europe. Europe is a union of children.
Thanks, fantastic. Susan, your commitment.
Ja, mein Europa für Kinder sieht so aus, dass es egal ist, woher das Kind kommt, auch egal ist, aus welcher Familie es kommt, welche Muttersprache es ist.
Doesn't make any difference where the child comes from, what its mother tongue is. It should have the best opportunities and become the personality it can be. That would be my dream.
Brando, you still there? I don't think so. So let's make a deal now. We will come back at the next PS Congress, and we will see what will happen with commitment. But in any case, thank you so much, because the work that you are doing in European institutions and in the leading country like Germany can be an example for others, is really remarkable on behalf of all progressives. And we keep fighting, right? Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Now we move on the second session of the workshops. I think we have Gergely Karacsony, the mayor of Budapest. Please come here, close to me. Hi, how are you? And online, Delphine Chabert. She's the member of the Brussels Parliament and also the Fédération Wallonie-Bruxelles. And I think we have, I don't know if we have connected also, we have Emmy Lintonen as well connected. Is she connected, or she will connect later, probably, from Finland? Anyway. Well, I'm very happy that we have been able to organize this second also part of the workshop, because we can find child union champions amongst progressive leaders in cities and regions. Actually, they are the ones that are in direct contact with children and families. They are the ones also that promote directly, are in charge of policies for children and many of them, like the ones that are here today, that are actually putting the child union on top on their agenda and at the heart of their action. So I hope that this section will inspire other progressive leaders in city and region. So I would like to ask Gergely first. Thank you for being with us. What are you doing in your city, Budapest, to promote especially childcare services and ensure, of course, that all children get access to childcare, also those that are vulnerable and they are more marginalized, please.
Nagyon szépen köszönöm a lehetőséget, hogy itt lehettek, és ezekről a fontos dolgokról beszélgetünk.
Very much for this opportunity for being here and for discussing these very important issues. I'm coming from a country which is characterized by relatively large spending on family policies. But at the same time, we must say that children remain one of the most vulnerable social groups. The Hungarian government has been the same government for almost 12 years now, and their policy has been to support the upper middle class in terms of child policies or family policies, but most children are born in lower classes and there is no support there. So therefore, a lot is left for municipalities to counterbalance these processes. I am now mayor of Budapest, and before that, for 5 years, I was mayor of one of the largest districts of Budapest. And this is important to emphasize because we have a system where districts are responsible for childcare, child policy, family policy, and I'm proud of the programs that we launched in family support, child support, and we have been able to do a lot to, like I say, counterbalance this perverted social policy followed by the Hungarian government. But at the same time, the Hungarian social net is a bit more like a piece of cheese, full of holes and large holes. Especially in terms of education and housing, we have serious problems to face. The most serious situation arises for the gypsy communities, but poor children, for the most part, belong to the majority. So, to the majority of the society. Housing is many times a dramatic problem, and education as well, which is very segregated and very much negatively biased towards poor families. This process has been reinforced by centralizing schools, the school system, and taking competence away from municipalities. This was justified at the time by the need to even out the level of service between municipalities, but we are still facing dramatic segregation in schools. In my opinion, municipalities have to regain control over schools, over education, but for that we need a change of government. And for this end, I am working on instituting a new government in Hungary.
I know that. So you just preceded me. I wanted to ask you that, but I will go a bit deeper in the following question. I would like to ask Delphine now. You are a member of the Parliament of the Brussels region, our capital of Europe, right? So we think about the Brussels region as, in any case, a rich area, huh? But could you give us the status of access to childcare in this affluent area, region, city of Europe, and whether there are still inequalities in access, and based on what type of problems, why there are still inequalities in, if there are, in Brussels, in access to childcare.
Oui, merci. Je voulais d'abord vous remercier pour l'invitation à ce séminaire.
Thank you very much. First of all, I wanted to thank you for inviting me to this workshop. It is a very important topic, and I am delighted to address this issue with progressive people here in Brussels and from other countries. So thank you for your invitation. You were right to insist on the fact that, yes, I live in Brussels. It is the European capital, one of the richest in Europe. However, with one of the highest child poverty rates, you should know that in Brussels, more than 4 children out of 10 live in poverty, which is huge. So this city is strongly segregated with high inequalities. And we've seen that as far as child policies are concerned, it's also very imbalanced. The coverage rate, you should know that as far as figures are concerned, it's about 33%. So one space available for 10 children. In the richest districts, the coverage rate of those childcare services may reach 60 to 70%. But then in the poorest districts, we have what we call the poor croissance, so the moon on the western part of the city. You have less, you really don't have enough childcare provided. And the problem we have is that we have public services that will apply the rates depending on parents' income, but then you also have lots of private childcare that apply very high rates, of course. And this basically prevents a whole part of the population to have access to these childcare services. We've seen that in our kindergartens, in our childcare centres in Brussels, the poorest families are underrepresented. So there is clearly, inequality here as far as childcare is concerned in Brussels, which unfortunately completely matches social inequalities in the field. So we need to have a stronger policy. What are we doing? I'm not going to dwell on the ambitions that have been mentioned before by the previous speakers, and I would like to thank them for the quality of their interventions and the strong messages they carried. But in Brussels, we launched a major reform of the child policies. They are based on 2 pillars. The first pillar is about access. We need to increase access. And then the second pillar is about increasing the quality. So we want to create and provide more access where we can, of course, and also we have to make sure that those are affordable. So that's what I do on a daily basis in the Parliament. That's my strong message, by always trying to put accessibility at the heart of those policies to make sure that those most vulnerable families can have access. And I also work at the level of my district because I believe that child policies, this struggle we all carry, we have to do it at several levels. Of course, at the level of the government, and then at every district level. So at this level, it's networking, I believe. It's about making sure that each centre is open on the district to make sure that the childcare centre can, be in contact with those families. We've noticed that many families do not even make a request to have access because they believe, they are convinced that they will not get it in the end. So there is a kind of self-censorship process going on. Therefore, we have to work with childcare centres to make sure that they contact the most disadvantaged families, because that would be, of course, a major improvement. Also, part of my work is trying to convince my colleagues within my party at the regional and national level. I think that's a struggle we have to carry. We are all convinced, of course, But still, this is something we have to do at an internal level. Therefore, I lead a working group at the regional level, in which we try to gather our forces, our strength. That's something we want to put forward, and we have to make sure that everybody's working in the same direction, that we work with people in the main cabinet, our people from our cabinet working in the ministries, people from the administrations, people from the parliament, like me, as well as people from the field, who progressive people who are fighting to open those policies to the most vulnerable families. So I really insist on this working group, which is important to also give more visibility to the socialist policy and also to make sure that we can get more budget, more money. Obviously, it's an important matter as well. We need to make sure that we have a higher budget to make sure we can create more childcare centres and make them more affordable. So that's in a nutshell the situation in Brussels, and that's what we try to do with the Brussels Socialist Party. Thank you.
Brussels is, as Delphine outlined, a very rich area in Europe, but still it's an urban area. So you have different areas within the area, and some of them are characterized by high level of poverty and less early childcare services. So we can see these inequalities within urban areas. I know the situation of Budapest. Budapest is, in any case, historically, is an historical attention towards children and child policies and childcare policies, but as you rightly pointed out, you're still facing kind of similar problems, adding, of course, the issue of minorities and discriminations coming from the central government. Delphine has an advantage in respect to you, because she is in an institutions where the socialists govern. They govern the federation. The president is socialist, but the government is composed by socialists. They don't have a hostile, let's say, central government. You are instead in a very different situation. But I would like to ask you to go a bit deeper in the issue that you have with your central government to maintain, on one hand, the system that Budapest had for years in terms of childcare and attention to children, and also, of course, upgraded, as you rightly pointed out. But I would like to also tell me something more. Do you think that you can build support from citizens? We are going to elections in Hungary too, and you are one of the front runner of our battle in Hungary. Do you think that these policies can raise citizen support?
Well, what is interesting in politics in Hungary, as I said, social transfers take up a lot of budget in Hungary, and the government likes to pose themselves as a family-friendly government. But like I said, this is reflected in social transfers, where basically money is taken away from the poor and given to the rich. And social support to children, which should be considered as basic income type of payment, has not changed since 2008. And in the tax system, there are incentives for high-income families. There was a pet project for the government, for instance. If you purchased a 7-seater car, you would receive support which would equal a year's income of a teacher, for instance. So the richer you are, the more support you get to raise your children, and the poorer you are, the less you get. Above the middle class, people are grateful to the government for this, but luckily there is a paradox in Hungarian politics. the richer you are, the less likely you are to support the government. And the government is usually more popular within more vulnerable classes of society who can be easier to manipulate. So the question is how we can broaden the basis of support, the base of support for political change. It is not impossible because the target group of politics is the same for everybody. And there is a very important element which is key to Hungarian politics, and that is that the government of Orbán is riding an upswing of international economic upsurge. And they have been redistributing towards the richer strata of Hungarian society. But now we are getting deeper and deeper in a crisis. And now it will be visible how weak the social net, the protection net is in Hungary. We have to address the systematic elimination of child poverty. The recovery plan that was submitted by the Hungarian government to the Commission has no element supporting children. So we drafted an alternative recovery plan where one of the most important priorities is elimination of child poverty. So we are suggesting to double child support in coming years. And the social system, the health system needs to be reinforced, since there are various studies that recall that early development is very important. Already at the stage of nurses who take care of infants. And this network is very important. This program is very important. If I'm elected Prime Minister, this will be one of the first priorities for my government. The recovery plan will be, according to our plans, replaced by a new draft, and that would be a turning point in Hungary.
That will be great. And we all hope that you will become elected as Prime Minister and do that, actually. What you say, it's very important.
Viszont ahhoz, hogy ez így legyen, most kénytelen vagyok elmenni egy nagyon fontos találkozóra, úgyhogy elnézést, hogy el kell búcsúznom a...
Can we translate? I didn't get it, sorry. They didn't translate it for me. Excuse me. Can you
I have to go to the other meeting.
No problem. Yeah, please.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And just to tell you, thank you for your engagement and good luck. We all want to see you there as Prime Minister and do finally policies that favor children. And I think you know very well. I mean, it's what you said. You're very clear. You're one of our child union champions. So thank you so much and good luck. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. So we have. Sorry, before we couldn't connect. Now we have Emmy Linton and Emmy. Hi. Emmy is a local councillor for Fossa. Fossa is in Finland, and she's also the vice president of the Demarinaiset. Sorry for my pronunciation. Is the Social Democratic Women of Finland. Hi, Emmy. So we catch up with you, and just if you can describe what you're doing in your municipality in terms of tackling child poverty and also ensuring childcare. For all the children, and of course, if there are issues in terms of inequalities.
Yes, thank you very much for your invitation to join this workshop, and very warm greetings from Finland. We are having our midnight summer fest here because sun is up all night. So I come from Forssa, which is a cozy and lively town from approximately 17,000 people. And Forssa is where people can find diverse and high-quality services just around the corner, always nearby. Forssa is located in the heart of southern Finland, and more than half of the population of Finland lives with 150 kilometers from Forssa. So Forssa is that we have a strategy to be the most child-friendly town in Finland. And we have earned 2 times UNICEF child-friendly municipality title. In Finland, we have a subjective right to daycare for all children. My party's goal in the long term is this to be free of charge for all. And in the short term, we believe that the zero fee category should be retained for those on lower incomes. Children's daycare is one of the most important equality-creating service systems, and high-quality childcare enables a more equal work life for parents and provides children with opportunities for more varied hobbies and social togetherness. Social Democrats in Finland support the idea of free daycare, reduced group sizes, and the maintenance of a subjective right to daycare for all children, especially those most disadvantaged and vulnerable. If I tell a little bit about Forssa, the town of Forssa organizes daycare at daycare centers and also at the family daycare. Children's family daycare takes place at the childminder's home, and the group can consist maximum of 4 children. If a parent is taking care of a child under 3 years old at home, the family can apply for a childcare allowance, and it is also possible to receive the municipal addition to the child needs, for example, if there is some kind of special care. In Forssa, these services are public and run by the municipality, so we are not having any private early childhood education. My opinion is that this is how we ensure the quality of these services. I think it's also important that we provide breakfast, lunch, and snacks for all the children at the daycare. And if I just shortly tell you how many children are taking a part of Forssa's early childhood education, from the age group of 2 to 3 years old, it's 76%, 1 to 2 years old, it's 61%, and even from 0 to 1 year old, it's 20%. And at the moment, municipality can decide the charge categorized, but it's usually these charges are linked to families' income rates. In Forssa, we have also a zero fee category for the lower income families, and always it matters if there is only one parent taking care of the family. Also, we have pre-primary education that is organized for 6 years olds and also to 5 year olds, and this is free education for every child, and all meals are also free. And with these age groups, the participation percent is 91.
Thank you, Emmy. I see. I mean, we know that Finland is quite advanced in this kind of policies, and what I really liked about your presentation is what you said very strongly, that you believe that only public childcare can ensure equality. Delphine described the situation of Brussels, in which, unfortunately, in some areas, you have private providers, and therefore, many children from lower socioeconomic status cannot access. So she's working, of course, she's a legislator, so she's working in the parliament to try to counteract that. I would like to ask you both one question, because at the end of the day, it all depends also on the relationship between the central government decision and the local government possibilities of implementation. I mean, we heard from Budapest the difficulties that they are having because of an hostile government that is not supporting municipalities in these policies. Actually, it does the contrary. Probably you don't have the situation because the same situation because you both have central progressive governments. But still, you might have, in any case, issues in the management of funding between the center, the regions, the cities and municipalities. So I would like to start from Delphine because Delphine described reform that she's tried to push for and how the reform might eventually overcome the problem of the usual problem that we have between the central government and the cities and municipality in managing the funds and therefore ensuring, for instance, that municipalities that have more difficulties receive even more funds for ensuring childcare for all children. Delphine first, and then I will ask something to Hemi, but to Hemi will be a bit more particular because you come from the small city. So I would like to also have the perspective of the small cities on that. Delphine first, thank you.
Oui, merci Christian. Alors, pour essayer de répondre à votre question de manière concise, c'est vrai que nous avons la chance ici d'avoir un gouvernement progressiste, fortement progressiste même. Par contre, on a le désavantage d'avoir un système politique et institutionnel très complexe en Belgique. Et pour rapidement vous expliquer, il faut savoir que pour les personnes qui sont en charge de la politique de l'enfance, aujourd'hui en Belgique, 11 millions d'habitants, il y a 11 ministres compétents à 4 niveaux de pouvoir différents. C'est une vraie difficulté. C'est une vraie difficulté. Alors donc, cette réforme dont je vous ai parlé au début, vous avez cité, en effet, elle veut travailler absolument...
aims at working on access and quality. So we want to reinforce quality because we know very much that the social function, the social dimension of childcare is clear. We want to fight against inequalities and child poverty, and this is only efficient if we have a high-quality childcare infrastructure. So we need to have more childcare centres. But as you said, we have this difficulty because different levels of power, we have different ministers, we have the local level. So we have in Belgium entities which are in charge at different levels, at national, at the level of the municipality, at regional level. So it makes it quite difficult to manage. And we're going to change this. Because, as you said, in Brussels, we have a public and a private offer. But childcare is not a public service. They are all operators which are either private operators or semi-private operators, but this is not a public service as such. So we're going to make it simpler. We're going to reduce the number of operators and make it easier if you want to open a kindergarten. But we also have to see things in a longer term, because today we need to have an agreement, then we're going to be funded. So it's quite, the process is a bit complicated. And we would like to do it in another way. We would like to have a program. We have to work on a certain number of criteria, which are not only the coverage level or coverage rate, because this is not enough. If you only take on board the coverage rate, will not be relevant. The poorest municipality in Brussels has 1 place for 10 children, and others have 1 vacant place for 7 children. So we need to define a minimum level. We want a minimum level of coverage of 50% as a minimum, And we also want to have more centers where the rate would be affordable for parents. And we also want to focus on the free access. So we need to work at two levels. First, we have to simplify the institutional organization, and we want to work based on a district. We want to, because as you know, this is a very dense area. We have one of the density rates which is amongst the highest in Europe. So we have really to be more targeted. We have to work where we have more single-parent families, where we have more vulnerable families. There we have to open more kindergartens. So we really have to take that on board. We have to really fine-tune our criteria. And we also have to diversify the supply, because lower-income families are more reluctant to leave their child in a kindergarten 5 days a week. So we have to provide for part-time care or open kindergartens very early in the morning. So we have to provide for flexible facilities. If you have a mother alone with her child, she has to follow a training. So sometimes it's difficult for her to decide if she's going to leave her child during the whole year. So we need to propose something which is more flexible. And of course, focusing on accessibility and affordability based on the income of the family and free of charge for the poorest families. So that's what we want to do, but we still have a lot of obstacles, and we want to reach this goal as socialists.
Delphine, that's very important what you said, because you know, before this session we discussed with Commissioner Schmidt and Brando Benifei about the child guarantee. And the child guarantee might help you a lot in the work you are doing, because engage country precisely in planning how to reach out the most vulnerable children with these services. So it also helps you in moving from, as you said, a variety of providers, working more on, I will say in French, appel à projet, move towards a plan, so a real policy based on the needs. So that's how the European Union probably can help, and also, of course, it can help by listening to you, because we listened from Budapest, from you, and now from Hemmi. Again, you are the one really in contact with the problem, so it's essential for the European Union. But Commissioner Smith said that it was very important to allow this point, that the European Union is in close contact with regions and cities, which are the ones implementing this policy, so they know what the problems are, and therefore the planning can be done properly. Hemi, you come from a small reality. It's not a big city. As you said, even is small, is at the center of Finland, because everyone is close to Fossa, apparently. I would like to ask you, what challenge a municipality that is smaller than others can face in dealing with these policies and these programs? And also, if you want, because I talked about the European Union, how the European Union can also support a small reality like you in high-income countries like Finland.
So I think money is always the problem everywhere, but in Forza we have chosen to be as child-friendly municipality as possible. So the investments to early childhood education are very obvious for us. The biggest problem we are having is decreasing amount of children, and it's the same challenge as in many municipalities in Finland. So I think that's the most hard problem to solve. And if we talk about Europe, I think many of Europeans are born in and grown in small cities, and even the biggest things can be started from something very small. So local politicians are in key role. So I think it is important to offer some platforms to change thoughts and effective ways to arrange services for citizens, so we can have this kind of conversations and change our thoughts. And as said, children's daycare is one of the most important equality-creating service systems. And but I think it's also important to offer support for families. And for example, child healthcare clinics. Those are a Finnish innovation. And in our party, we think that resources for child health clinics must be secured in every municipality. So I think this is very near for child daycare, so we get most effective work done. And there must be always enough checkups, so the families get the right kind of support at the right time, and families need support in their everyday life. And thus the safety net supporting them must be complete. And this kind of work we are doing in every municipality in Finland, but money is always the problem. But I think we just have to choose what we want to do. I've been local councillor for 8 years now, almost 9, and I think I've never have conversation that we wouldn't like to invest our money to children. It's very obvious for us.
Thank you so much. We are running out of time, but I would like to ask you, as I did in the first panel, couple of seconds. Make a commitment for the children of your region, city. Couple of seconds. Make a commitment for them, and of course, next time that we will see each other, we will check this commitment. Please, Delphine.
Un engagement, c'est ça que vous me demandez.
So you're asking for a commitment. Well, my commitment would be to make sure that this reform can be implemented, to create more daycare and to make sure it can be free of charge. As a progressive, I think we need to provide a universal service. And also there's a very important word. We can't have a progressive child policy without having a gender equality, a strong gender equality policy. Let me insist on this, because within our parties as well, I'm sorry to be quite blunt, even if I'm really happy to hear many men talking about this topic, let me be clear, in Brussels it's not always the case. So we also have to fight against some kind of sexism within our party as well, and we need to move towards some very strong policies in the area of gender equality. I believe in Finland you are much more advanced than us, but there's still a lot to do here in Brussels as well as in many other European member states. So we have to couple those two policies to make sure that we can fight against these inequalities, because families' precariousness means women's precariousness first, and you already talked about the transmission of poverty from one generation to another. So I'm also strongly advocating for a strongest policy in the area of gender equality. Thank you.
And of course, I live in Brussels, so I will check what you're doing. But you're absolutely right, and we try to pass this message that fighting child poverty is fighting for social equality at the broader sense, and it involves especially also the gender issue. So it's really important what you said. Emmy, your commitment now?
My commitment is that every child has a subjective right to daycare and warm meals in every country of Europe.
That will be great, Emmy, thanks. And for a simple reason, because it's not happening. right now. We are living probably in the most advanced part of the world in terms of welfare system, but we're still having, as Commissioner said before, 18 million children in risk of poverty, that they do not access services and they do not have what you said. So thank you for your commitment, and in general, thank you so much for the work that you are doing in your own reality. It's really admirable, and I really hope that this section will inspire other policymakers. I would like to take from some comments that Emmy illustrated to present the last speaker. Emmy said, this innovation sometimes doesn't start from big cities, from big urban areas. It can start from small or medium cities, and money is a choice. So you might have a small reality that decided to put money in order to do it. And we have Tiziana Filippini here with us. Tiziana has come from Reggio Emilia. Reggio Emilia is a city in Italy. It's not a big urban area. It's a medium-sized city, but is characterized by, I repeat what in the 1990s the Newsweek said, by the best nurseries, childcare and preschool system in the world. The Reggio Children approach is considered universally as a sort of inspiration for equality and inclusiveness. It was done by Progressive, is still run by Progressive, and we are here a living legend because she was one of the best, and still one of the best pedagogists. Please, Tiziana, tell us this beautiful and unique experience that you did in Reggio Emilia.
Very happy to be with you. I really spent the entire life trying to promote and defending the right of the children to be educated. And so I am very pleased to be with you today and share some of the feature of this approach that is so-called the Reggio approach. The Reggio approach found its historical root in Reggio Emilia, my city, and the city council back in the 60s opened the first preschool, mainly pushed by women movement, women worker union, citizen that really wanted to have different opportunity for their children. And Lori Malaguzzi, the founder of this approach, started working with the town council at that time, and he was really inspired by the earlier experience in the rural area, in which a lot of women, a lot of citizens after the Second World War decided to invest in a new society, decided that the way to rebuild their village was to start from a different education and right since the beginning with the very young children. So this investment in future was something that had a big impact in Malaguzzi, that started since the beginning thinking that infant toddler center and preschool are educational places, are places that has a strong ethic, political, cultural vocation. Education, he kept saying, is not neutral. It's strongly a political matter. And so he always worked to have this big dialogue, ongoing dialogue in between the city, the town council, the family, and the school. Nowadays, we have an integrated system, 33 centers, in a project 0 to 6. And we want this to be, integrated so that also other centers can join the municipality for reaching a good quality.
Tiziana, we can't hear you well. The connection is a bit...
all over the city, and to open up a possibility for the entire population of our children to attend an infant. I'm sorry. Do you think I have to take away the screen? So maybe I go
try,
through
so it's
easily?
going to be better. Yeah, try.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. If this can help.
It's good. Go ahead.
I don't know where I was talking about how for Malaguzzi this center were not just place of care and assistance, but since the beginning it was looking at the center as a place in which child and family with ethical, political, cultural vocation could have could become natural meeting place between different parts of our society, representing the complexity and the multiplicity of identity present in our city. So they have always tried to become places of great importance for social cohesion, for the renewal of a citizenship pact, for the construction of a sense of belonging, which behind or by virtue of different identity and culture can increase the capacity for coexistence and solidarity within our city, and we would like also within our country, looking for the children as citizens of this planet. A choice that places the complexity of mankind and system of coexistence at the center of education. And Malaguzzi started all this by trying to change the traditional image of the child. So he was choosing to look at the child as a powerful, well-equipped human being, because if we were looking at the child as so powerful, we needed to have a good school, good infant toddler center, qualified teacher, and also this center could become places in which not only the children, but also the teacher, the family, could really get involved and be able, to see infant toddler center and preschool as a place where we all educate, one is educating the others, because education is a dialogue, is circularity among the people that attend the infant toddler center, but also in between the infant toddler center and the city. We have in each center, we have a board of parent and citizen elected by the parent and the people and the staff and the citizen of the quarter in which the center, the infant toddler center and the preschool are located. And also the representative of each center of this board are a town council, childhood council, involved in parent and citizen in main decision that has to do with the policy for our young population. And mainly the fee for the budget for running the center are covered by our local government, by the municipality of Reggio. And they are open to all the children. Since the beginning, they were open also children with special rights or disabilities. And you will really see how the picture, the landscape of the population of Reggio is represented inside this. Malaguzzi thought that in order to be able, to really cope with these children that are so equipped and so able to also take advantage of all their competences, we needed teachers that are not just transmitting, but teachers who are able to create context in which the learning of the children can take place, trying to meet the children according to where they are, and then starting from where they are, starting by understanding, listening, be open to see all the different strategy, different identity, start to work with them and support them by creating context in which this capacity of the children may evolve. And this asks for professional development that he put inside working schedule since the beginning, so it's recognized, it's paid, and also the meeting with the parents are inside the working time of the teachers, and they are working through collegiality, through exchange, really through the participation of the family, and the participation of the city is also important in helping all of us that are working inside the school to be aware, to be updated of how our society are changing and how we need to keep moving and to keep updating our paradigm in terms of what does it mean education nowadays and what role can we play in supporting the vision of society we may have, and mainly the vision of the relationship we would like to see in the population of our community, in our society.
Tiziana, just to because we need to close. What you're saying, it's extremely important in my view, because you're describing a situation where it's not just a project of a teacher or a child, a family, it's a project of a city. So it's an idea of places where we create democracy, basically. That's what you're doing. And I thank you so much. Unfortunately, we have to close for your testimony. This is not just one-off event. We will meet you in person in Reggio Emilia next year.
That will be beautiful.
Because we will gather progressive leaders next year in Reggio Emilia. Delphine will be with us, Emmy, and all the people that they speak here. We hope to have the mayor of Budapest as prime minister. We will bring there, and we will do more. So we will continue to work on this topic. It's the end of this event. I have to thank you so much, all of you, for your time, and especially the organizer, the Party of European Socialists in the European Committee of the Region, the Socialist and Democrat group in the European Parliament, and the Foundation of European Progressive Studies for organizing these beautiful events. As Progressive, I also make the commitments as Progressive, on behalf of Progressive, we will keep fighting for a child union as a community that cares, a union of children where every child is entitled the right to have education since the start and also being free from poverty. That's the real meaning of building next generation EU. Thank you so much for being with us today, and see you next year in Reggio Emilia. Thanks. Bye.